Introduction to Three Economists: Thomas Malthus, Adam Smith, Karl Marx. Remember scarcity, the reason we study economics? The first economist we study specialized in scarcity. Thomas Malthus was born in 1766 and passed away in 1834. His theory of overpopulation dealt with resource issues. He was a well-educated man who became a teacher, professor, and was an Anglican minister in the Church of England. His theory was called the Malthusian theory. I always find it interesting his theory sounded so much like his own name. His first premise that he based his theory upon was the observation population doubles, increases geometrically, exponentially, dramatically. Doubling increases very quickly. It's like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 5, 12, 10, 24, etc. Arithmetic increase is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So population increasing exponentially or dramatically means the Earth experiences heavy population increases. From the statistics we have looked at in the handouts you have received, we started off in the year 0 or 1 with about 250 million people on the planet. It took 1,480 years to double to 500 million people, or 500 million. It took only 350 years to 1830 to double again to finally make 1 billion. It only took 100 years for the population to double again to 2 billion people by the year 1930. It took only 40 years to 1970 to double to 4 billion, and we're now on our way to 8 billion by around 2030. His second observation was land is fixed. These days, we understand, land is actually decreasing as oceans rise. The third premise that he based his theory upon was food requires massive quantities of land. People can live in fairly small spaces. We cram people into cities of millions of people in fairly small areas, but food requires many acres to feed each person every year. We add these three premises up. His conclusion is there will be inevitable starvation at some point on planet Earth. It's because of Thomas Malthus's conclusions other economists of his time began referring to economics as, quote, the dismal science, unquote. What was the most important document written in 1776? The Wealth of Nations, written by Adam Smith, the father of economics. If anyone says he's my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather on my mother's side, don't believe them. It's not true, really. Smith was also considered the father of capitalism, or the free market, markets without government controls. He was an eccentric, a teacher, and is still well respected by economists today. His book was over 800 pages of very tiny print. He was prone to tangents that would last 70 to 80 pages before he would return to his main point, which he always did. He spent more book text explaining his dissenters' opinions than he did justifying his own. He was a bit eccentric. He was once known to have wandered miles from his own home in his bedroom slippers and robe because he was in such deep thought. At parties, he would tend to go off into such deep, passionate rants about economics, people would tend to back away. A friend once told him as he was healing from a harsh head injury, "Don't worry, you're still ugly." Here are some of the answers I have heard in the past in regards to the most important document written in 1776. The Declaration of Independence, 1776. Good. The Constitution, 1787. The Bill of Rights, 1791. The Magna Carta, 1215. In order for a free market to function, certain conditions must occur in order for citizens to assume the responsibility of solving three basic economic problems. If these basic economic problems do not get solved, people leave for greener pastures. They leave for other countries. They emigrate elsewhere. The first basic economic problem, which quote unquote needs to be solved, is what to produce. Economies have to figure out what people want and figure out how to produce that. In a free market economy, this is done with the market equilibrium between consumers and producers. Producers try to figure out what consumers are demanding and to produce it. The second basic economic problem is how much to produce. There are two ways an economy can get it wrong. If they produce too much, this is called a surplus. This is waste, and it impacts the profits of producers. The second problem is to produce too little. This is called a shortage and negatively impacts consumers. The third basic economic problem is for whom to produce or how to distribute the goods to the people who want them and not to the people who do not want them. In a free market, this is decided by producers. Command economy, such as communism, the government decides this, and this tends to create huge bureaucracy, problems, and issues. So these three things are what societies need, quote unquote, to figure out how to solve in order to function and survive. Adam Smith's book was a bestseller, and our founding fathers considered it when creating the Constitution. What conditions do you think are necessary in a society which will encourage people to create goods for each other without being forced by government authority to do so? Students seldom answer this question because the foundation of it is so fundamental to what we consider basic human rights, we cannot imagine government would influence it, but it can. In command systems, communism, citizens do not really have this pure right, and it is the key to incentivizing our productivity. Here is what Adam Smith said was necessary for the free market to exist. The four fundamentals or pillars of capitalism. Number one, the right to own property. Yes, this is a right, and it does not exist everywhere. In certain command system, communist settings, goods and property are not individually owned, they are owned collectively. And it's not just about owning property, it's the right to own as much as you can get your hands on, as long as you do so legally. This right can at times evolve into self-indulgent excess. Who really needs $170 billion? But students should be encouraged to have a clear conscience in pursuing the moderate accumulation of personal property, appreciating the opportunities available in the free market which they were born into. Next is profit incentive. This is the drive to succeed at ownership. As Adam Smith reiterates many times throughout his book, those pursuing their own self-interest to succeed will create goods, and it will have a public benefit by producing goods for society at large. This drives the free market system. Thirdly, there needs to be consumer choice in the free market system. If consumers can't make choices, the free market breaks down. It not only has to be a right written into the laws of a particular society, it has to be an ability due to a variety of goods available. In cases where there is a monopoly in the market, consumers lose this ability to have choices. So, who decides what is produced in a free market? This is key to remember as a foundational principle for this course. Consumers decide what is to be produced with their demand. So we add these three ingredients up. The right to own property, which creates profit incentive, stir in some consumer choice. What do we have that drives the free market according to Adam Smith? Competition. This is the system which creates new and better goods in abundance in this system. Smith wrote that what structures a free market is the invisible hand of competition. Competition is what drives our economy for people to continuously produce more goods, better goods, more efficiently. People compete successfully when they do three things. So here we're clicking on the word competition, opening it up, and looking inside of what it really means to compete successfully. Number one, if someone is looking to compete successfully, they must observe demand. Suppliers must produce what consumers want. You can produce the best widget in the world that has amazing qualities, but if people don't want it, if you produce some diet drink that is the most incredible thing to lose weight ever invented, but it doesn't taste good and people won't drink it, you will not be successful. Secondly, suppliers must produce a better quality product to compete successfully. And this is something we see daily with our free market system. Every month, there's a better computer, there's a better cell phone, there's a better bicycle, a better golf club. People trying to succeed in competition by enhancing the quality of a product. Number three, producing goods at a cheaper price. This means being more efficient at how you produce a good. So these are the three things that people have to do. They have to observe demand, they have to produce a better quality product, and they have to do it cheaper. And if you do it cheaper, and the free market is uncorrupted with democratic rules applied to keep it fair, then people who accomplish these three things should become very successful, like all of these images of success here indicate. Every day, people in large cities, such as New York and everywhere, arise with the faith every good they desire in all their unique specificity will be on the shelves of their local stores. The bread, the eggs, the meats, down to the specific color of nail polish, exotic beverages, and the beluga caviar they prefer. Seldom does anyone question how this occurs. And in the U.S. market system, no government committee in D.C. or Sacramento has any role in making these output, pricing, or distribution decisions. It's all done by ground-level consumers and producers. And the U.S. has continued to be highly productive and affluent, producing a plentiful and diverse variety of products available. Envision the cereal aisle at your local supermarket and how many choices you have. It's 70 feet long and 7 feet high. There's oat cereal, wheat cereal, hot cereal types, cold cereal types, barley cereal, granola in 14 varieties with various nut and fruit choices. There's Cheerios, Wheaties, Rice Krispies, Frosties, Muesli, Special K, Kashi, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Lucky Charms, Mini Wheats, Fruit Loops, Malto Meal, Raisin Bran, Fruity Pebbles, Count Chocula, Total, Life, Cap'n Crunch, Apple Jacks, Corn Flakes, Kix, Corn Pops, Sugar Pops, Trix, just to name a few. This is brought to you from the makers of Free Market Competition. Check it out. Meantime, in the old Soviet Union under communism in the 1980s, a command system where the government was involved in the production and pricing and distribution of goods, there were often food shortages. Notice the empty shelves and the lack of variety of goods. Also, it appears risky when our communist government is designing the clothing options on the shelves of your local stores. Although this last dress was produced under Russian capitalism in 2020. Karl Marx, 1818 to 1883, author of the Communist Manifesto written in 1848. Why is Karl Marx and communism always associated with the color red? Students make a lot of guesses at this point. It's because his news publication, Das Kapital, was written in red ink. What nationality was he? No, he was not Russian. He was German, and he loved cigars. I think it's important to point out some trivia occasionally to give you a better picture of who someone was. He resisted the idea of his book being translated into Russian. He wanted Germany to embrace his ideas and proposed economic structure. Since early on, then, the color red has been associated with communism and communist countries. And if you are considered slightly communist, such as, to a lesser degree, socialist, you may be referred to as pink or a pinko. Quote from Karl's mother, "If only Karl would have made capital instead of just writing about it, we'd all be better off." Karl Marx's fundamental precepts regarding capitalism. Number one, the proletariat was being exploited by the bourgeoisie, in his opinion. The proletariat defines as the non-land-owning working class. The bourgeoisie defines as the wealthy business-owning capitalist profiteers. He also referred to the petite bourgeoisie, meaning the small business owner. He witnessed this exploitation during his time in England, during their Industrial Revolution, particularly in the textile mills. At this point in history, England was making cloth in these mills from cotton they received from the United States and also wool from Scotland. Working in these English textile mills was very unhealthy work. The dust from the cloth production produced lung disease, and people were often very sick. In his manifesto, he told the story of a small sick child working with toxic phosphorus in the manufacturing of wooden matches. This dramatically impacted him. The second fundamental precept of Karl Marx's view of capitalism was that the wealthy would eventually corrupt the capitalistic system. He believed wealth ill distributes power and influence to the wealthy to control the system, and the less powerful, who in this case were the more numerous working class, received little but subsistence wages. Do we tend to underestimate and ignore the social, economic, and political power of those within our societies who have amassed billion-dollar fortunes? This is a good topic for discussion. According to free market capitalism, what is the purpose of being in business? I ask many times every quarter. The answer is to maximize profit. So the third fundamental precept of Karl Marx relates to this. He said, any economic system based solely on profit is doomed to failure. Adam Smith believed this pursuit of self-interest was key to competition and key to the success of free market capitalism. Marx believed this would create an off-balance system of a few very wealthy people on one side and much poverty and other problems which would eventually collapse the system on the other. But Marx did not anticipate capitalism would create regulatory laws to preserve itself, such as anti-monopoly legislation and taxation for wealth redistribution. Still, many agree that a profits over people business approach is at the root of many social, environmental, and resource problems in the world today.